The dust rises beneath the legionaries' sandals as they march in perfect formation along the ancient roads stretching across the Roman Empire. Their armor gleams under the sun, reflecting a discipline that is both awe-inspiring and intimidating. The only sounds are the rhythmic clinking of metal, the steady breathing of the soldiers, and the synchronized thud of thousands of feet hitting on the ground in unison. In battle, the Roman army moves in disciplined silence, a calculated strategy that sets them apart from the roaring war cries of other ancient armies. But why did the Romans choose silence when so many of their enemies relied on noise and intimidation? This silence was no mere accident or a simple matter of preference. It was a core aspect of Roman military discipline, deeply rooted in their need for precise coordination and control on the battlefield. The Roman military machine was one of the most efficient and effective in ancient history. Their success was not just due to superior equipment or numbers, but also because of their unparalleled discipline and organization. Every legionary knew his place in the formation, understood the signals, and followed orders without hesitation. This level of discipline required a calm and focused environment, especially during the chaos of battle. Julius Caesar, one of Rome's most famous generals and statesmen, documented numerous instances during his Gallic Wars where maintaining silence was crucial. When executing surprise maneuvers or ambushes, the Romans would advance quietly to maintain the element of surprise. Any unnecessary noise could alert the enemy and jeopardize the entire operation. In his commentary De Bello Gallico, Caesar notes how silence was maintained even when the soldiers were eager for battle, emphasizing the restraint and discipline ingrained in them. One of the most iconic Roman formations that benefited from silence was the testudo, or tortoise formation. In this defensive tactic, soldiers would align their shields to form a protective barrier on all sides and overhead, resembling a tortoise shell. This formation required precise coordination. Even a slight miscommunication could create gaps, leaving the unit vulnerable to enemy projectiles. Silence ensured that orders could be relayed effectively through visual cues and that soldiers could focus on maintaining the integrity of the formation. Communication within the Roman army relied heavily on visual and auditory signals rather than verbal commands shouted across the battlefield. Standards such as the eagle, aquila, were held high so that soldiers could see them above the fray and know where to position themselves. Musical instruments played a vital role as well. The tuba, a straight bronze trumpet, and the cornu, a large curved horn, were used to signal various commands: when to advance, retreat, or change formation. These instruments had distinct sounds that could be heard over the noise of battle, allowing commanders to control large groups of soldiers without the confusion that shouted orders might cause. In stark contrast to the Roman preference for silence stood their adversaries, many of whom used noise as a psychological weapon. The Greeks, for instance, had a tradition of invoking the goddess Alala before charging into battle. Soldiers would shout her name, creating a collective war cry intended to boost their own morale while intimidating the enemy. This practice was deeply embedded in their culture, reflecting a belief in the power of divine intervention and the psychological impact of sound on the battlefield. The Gauls, whom the Romans encountered frequently during their expansions into Western Europe, were renowned for their deafening roars and fierce battle cries. These warriors sought to unsettle their enemies through sheer noise, reflecting the wild and untamed nature of their warfare. Ancient sources describe Gaulish warriors as charging into battle with loud shouts, brandishing their weapons, and sometimes even fighting naked to intimidate their foes further. Similarly, the Germanic tribes had their own unique approach to psychological warfare. They employed the Berytus, a war chant that began as a low murmur and escalated into a thunderous roar. Tacitus, a Roman historian, describes this practice in his work Germania, noting how the tribesmen would hold their shields in front of their mouths to amplify the sound, creating an eerie and intimidating effect. The Berytus was not just a means to scare the enemy, but also served to unite the warriors and bolster their courage before the clash. Despite their emphasis on silence, the Romans were pragmatic and adaptable. They recognized the value in the tactics employed by their enemies and were not above incorporating effective methods into their own practices. A notable example of this adaptability is seen during Boudicca's revolt in 61 AD. Boudica, the queen of the Iceni tribe, led a massive uprising against Roman rule in Britain. According to Tacitus in his Annals, as the Britons approached with loud shouts and war cries, the Romans initially stood in disciplined silence. They held their ground, waiting patiently until the Britons were within the optimal range for their pilum, the heavy javelin used by Roman legionaries. At the precise moment, the Romans broke their silence with a fierce battle cry of their own and launched their javelins into the advancing ranks of the Britons. This sudden shift from silence to noise had a significant psychological impact. The disciplined release of noise served to startle the enemy and signaled the Roman counterattack. This tactical use of sound demonstrated the Roman understanding of psychological warfare and their ability to use it effectively when it suited their purposes. As the centuries progressed, the Roman military continued to evolve, influenced by the diverse cultures within the expanding empire. By the 4th century AD, the composition of the Roman army had changed significantly. Many soldiers were recruited from the provinces and border regions, including the Germanic tribes that had once been Rome's adversaries. With them, they brought their own traditions and practices. The Berytus chant, once used by Germanic warriors, began to be adopted by Roman auxiliary units comprised of these recruits. The Roman military leadership saw the benefits of such a practice and allowed its incorporation, reflecting Rome's ability to assimilate and utilize the strengths of different cultures within its ranks. The adoption of the Berytus and other foreign elements did not mean that Roman discipline was compromised. On the contrary, it demonstrated the flexibility and adaptability of the Roman military system. The core principles of organization, discipline, and tactical proficiency remained intact, but the army was not static. It evolved in response to new challenges and incorporated effective practices regardless of their origin. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this deep dive into Roman military tactics, don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe for more historical content, and ring the bell to stay notified about our latest videos. Your support helps us bring more history to life. See you in the next one.